we have to add some CSS per paragraph. So again, we will use the P as a selector and curly bracket open close. Okay, write as a P as a selector and curly bracket open and close. Okay. Next, after this, inside the paragraph, we'll say, okay, one paragraph will have margin from other paragraph as a 1%, or maybe give 20 pixel, 30 pixel percentage. We'll see next example. Next, inside the paragraph, also there should be some gap. For that, you will keep as a padding 30 px, no problem. For paragraph, set some height also. Example 120 pixel. For paragraph, give a background also. Suppose as a white color, right? For paragraph, give some more text property, text hyphen align colon center. Text align as a center. Okay, so hope you are following. Now check one. How this paragraph look? Save the file. Paragraphs are coming, but all are going to the new line. All are going to the new line. Hope looks similar.
Sir, my background pink color is not coming.
This is the code you can put line.
Sir, mine also.
That one line code is there. That next we can see here. The code of paragraph and body in chat. In case any problem, you can use this code also. You should close comment properly. Who is that? Dell. Person who login for a Dell. You have see here. This line is not correct. Can you see this line?
Yes, sir.
Compare this.
Okay. Done, sir. Thank you.
Hmm?
Done, sir.
Sir, I have checked my code, but background pink is not coming.
Remove everyone this comment. Remove this comment part.
Okay, sir.
Keep this much and then try.
It is coming, sir.
Comment.
Yes, sir.
Comment was not closed properly.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move next. Now paragraph will come something like this. So for this paragraph, we will limit the width. Width we have not given. Let's limit the width. Suppose 200. We limit the width. Suppose 200. Now what will happen? Is it coming in the same line? No. Right? Can anyone let me know why it is not coming in the same line? Any idea in mind?
Hello, sir. Road is not in line.
It is in the going to a new line. Now question, if anyone asks why it is going to the new line, what is the problem of that?
So because p tag is a block table tag, that's why.
And that's all, only one reason. P tag is
Sir,
a
display.
tag. It will not come in the same line. It will go by default to where? New line. So we have one solution, float left. Float left will convert from block to inline. After that, all will come in the same line. After that, all will come in the same line. Yeah, it's coming in the same line. It happen only for paragraph tag. It will not happen for division tag. Let's come and check once. Write one div div, close the div, close the div. Okay, hope is happening for division. It should not happen for division. Division will go here, there, wherever they want. Okay, because you have written the CSS not for division tag, you have written the CSS for those selector whose name is P. Look at here, P. Now we'll come down. So P becomes a selector, body becomes a selector. We are adding one more division here. In that division, we will give everything similar. Maybe we can change the background. Change the background to orange color and check. Now it should happen for div. Happening for div. Please check once and confirm as well. Okay, let's go ahead. Similar or different? Should look similar. Now you see here, whichever the code you wrote, property you wrote for P tag, it is applying only for P tag. Whichever the property we wrote, it is only applying for the P tag. Next, whichever the property we wrote, it is getting applied for the okay, it is getting applied for the which one? Div tag. Now, then you will ask how to write the CSS for by tag name. So CSS by tag name is simple. Write a name of the tag, open the flower bracket, close that, and put inside property and value. Okay, it will work. What is sir? आ सकते हैं हम इधर ही हैं। ओएस का तो पता नहीं, इसमें बहुत सारा डेटा अभी बैकअप लेना होगा तब करना होगा, क्योंकि वो आदमी अभी आया नहीं है, वो बैकअप है। डेटा है, बहुत है इसमें, बहुत सारे डेटा बेसेस हैं और बहुत सारा चीज है, सबको बैकअप लेना होगा तभी करेंगे। हाँ, ठीक। Okay, hope ready. Now come. We can copy this two line and we can write a documentation in our developer guide saying like whenever we write the CSS like this, tag name, curly bracket open close, property value, one tag name, curly bracket open close, property value, right? So this method is going to call as a what? This method is going to call as a CSS by tag name. This method is going to call CSS by tag name. That meaning CSS you are writing for a tag name. Wherever you will call the tag, there the property will get applied. Wherever you will call the tag, property will get applied. Now let me go inside here and see. These all three are a paragraph. These five are as a division. So what CSS you wrote per paragraph, it is getting applied only to the paragraph, and which CSS we wrote per division, it is getting applied only to the division. Mismatch is not happening here, if you can see. Mismatch is not happening here, if you can see. What mismatch is not happening? Whichever the CSS we wrote per paragraph, it apply only to the paragraph, which we wrote for div, it only apply to the div. This is also one method where people use in the market CSS by tag name. In current page, wherever the tag will come, all the places the particular property and value will get apply easily. All the places the particular property and value will get applied easily. Okay, now come next. Copy these two sections, go to your developer guide, CSS by tag name you have written, write an example here. Please write it here as example. We will paste over there that example code. Okay, ready? Now paste that code here.
Sir, I have one doubt.
Tell me, sir.
Sir, instead of float left, it will write display inline. Then any difference? Because I just tried, so it is not coming like that, like float left is working.
Without understanding, if you write, problem will come.
Yeah.
Discuss on, we have given the idea of display inline only for li tag. Only for li we are written, no, yesterday.
Yes, sir.
I will guide you where to write the float left, where to write the display inline, where to write the display flex. Okay. 3 options we have to convert from block to inline. But before implementing all 3, basic foundation is required.
Yes.
Then and difference will come clearly in the mind. If basic foundation is not clear, the difference will not understand properly.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All will come one by one, but some time is required. Okay, hope we written. Now, so how to write a CSS by tag name? Write a tag name, curly bracket open close, inside n number of property value, your wish, you can write it, it will work. Okay, whichever the property value you want to write, we can write it will work easily. Okay, now moving on. Next we have this method, CSS by ID. How to write the CSS by ID means inside HTML, how to create the ID, and for that, how to write the CSS. Okay, create next example, CSS by ID.html. CSS by ID.html. Next file. CSS by ID.html. In that file, we will start HTML and will follow the head section. Under the head section, we will use the style tag. Within a style tag, we will write something. Come to the body. Inside the body, write p tag, id equal to abc, one p tag, three p tag you write id equal to abc, and fourth p tag you write without abc. Okay, fourth p tag we will write without abc. Okay, hope written. Now come up. How to write the CSS for a ID? How to write the CSS for a ID? Okay, so for that, we have some solution. ID will be ID for paragraph, we call the property called ID. That is the true. For paragraph, we call a property called ID. That is true. No problem at all. Now question is for that ID, how to write the CSS? For that ID, how to write the CSS? So we can go here and we can follow the hash. Hash represent the ID. In web technology, wherever you write the hash, your browser will consider hash represent the ID. For browser, not consider, it's the theory itself. For browser, the theory itself is, what is that? Hash represent the ID. For browser, the theory it says the hash represent the ID. Hash represent the ID. Okay, next after that, what is the ID? ABC. So browser will search in current page where is the ID called ABC, and wherever the ID ABC will come, for that this property value will get applied. You can copy from the previous example any one paragraph and paste here. And check. It will apply for all p tag where ID is ABC. It will not apply to those p tag where ID is not mentioned. Where ID is not mentioned. Okay, hope written. Check now. Page is working or not working. This will work, but the conditional, it will not work for all the paragraph. It will work for those paragraph whose ID is ABC. Background, we have to do something here. Background white you have given. Write as a orange color. Then it will be visible. Background keep as a orange color. Then it will be visible. Okay, ready? Check now. Happening for 3 paragraph. 4th paragraph having no anything. Why? Because the CSS you have written for the p tag. Okay, but those p tag, not all the p tag. See, it's in that it's clearly written. It's written for the p tag, but which p tag? Question is which p tag? Does it include all the p tag? No, it is not going to include all the p tag. It is going to include only those p tag. It is going to include only those p tag who have ID as a ABC. It is going to represent those elements whose ID is ABC. Okay, it is not for all the p tag. It's a clearly written. It's not for all the p tag. It is for the even not for the p tag. It is for those tag whose ID is It's for those tag whose ID is ABC. So question is how to create the ID in CSS. So in CSS, we can create the ID using hash. In CSS, we can create the ID using hash. In CSS, we can create the ID using hash. Right? Hope working. Or anyone have error? We need to remember as well.
कितना जीबी पूछ रहा है?
जीबी तो है पूरा भरा हुआ। डेटाबेस जीबी में नहीं होता है, तो डाउनलोड का प्रोसेस थोड़ा ठीक है।
तो है आपके पास वो करने के लिए?
वो तो दूसरे ड्राइव में कर सकते हैं, अब पूरा फॉर्मेट
पूरा फॉर्मेट करने को कर सकते हैं, लेकिन वो पूरा फॉर्मेट करने का ही मतलब फॉर्मेट का असली लाभ तभी मिलता है जब पूरा
में बैकअप ले लेते हैं, कर मार देते हैं।
हाँ बैकअप ले लीजिए, ठीक है। कल मैं ऐसे ही सुबह में आऊँगा, यहीं मार के चला।
इसको दूसरे मतलब कहीं और कॉपी करना होगा।
आपके पास है व्यवस्था है? नहीं होगा तो मेरे पास
इनका क्या है, चलना है वो लगाएंगे
ठीक है।
Okay, working. Now let us go copy this section or write here for the second paragraph. ID equal to XYZ. ID equal to XYZ has XYZ. For that also keep similar thing. Change the background, pink color. ID XYZ, and for that copy same property value, change the background. Hope working. 3 paragraphs should look different and the 4th paragraph should look different. So using ID, the same tag can look different. Using the ID, the tag will be same and the look will be different. Using same ID, using the same, the tag will remain same, and using the ID, the look will be different. Okay, so hope ready. Let's go ahead for the next. We can copy the first section and paste in developer guide. Example. How to write the CSS using ID. How to write the CSS using ID. Now from there, one paragraph also you need to copy and paste there, so that you will understand, oh, here is the ID and here I am creating the ID. Will be clear, both together will be one place, will be clear for you. Okay, hope ready. Now next is how to create the class. CSS for a class. Okay, come down, create the next file, css by class.html. Css by class.html. We can take the copy of ID. They have created a file css by ID. You can take the copy of that and save css by class. Css by class.html. You can take the copy of css by ID. Code written. Now let's go in this file. We will use all three methods. by ID, by class, by tag name, all three. In this example, we will follow all three methods: by ID, by class, and by tag name. First, write CSS for body. That is called CSS by tag name. Background, sky blue. So here the CSS you wrote for a tag. The tag name is called, what is the tag name? Body. The tag name is called as a body. Ready? Now for body tag, what will happen? PG color will be sky blue. Now come down below. Three places we are written ID, ID, ID. Convert into class. Class, class, and class. Last one, let it be ID only. ABC ID, convert into class. ABC ID, convert into class. Okay, hope ready. Class equal to ABC, ABC, ABC. How many times you wrote? Hope 3 times. Now we need to understand how to create the class. While calling, we call here class equal to ABC, ABC, ABC. While creating, how to create that? While creating, how to create that? It is simple. When you create the CSS by ID, when we use the CSS by ID, we use hash. But when we use the CSS by class, we use dot here. Hash replaced by dot. Hash change to dot. Okay. Hash be replaced by dot. So dot will be called as a class in complete web technology. Wherever the dot will come, in CSS, in JavaScript, in jQuery, okay, everywhere dot will represent the class, and hash will represent the ID. Okay, everywhere dot will represent the class, and hash will represent the ID. Next, after that, run this file and check once what is coming. Background will be sky blue. 3 belong to one class and 1 belong to ID. 3 belong to one class. The body is based on tag name. These divisions are based on ID, sorry, class. Last one is based on ID. Check once, working or not. Next, after that, copy this section, come to the developer guide, write their example, paste this one. And you can keep this kind of paragraph 2 times and change class equal to ABC. Hope ready? Now come down. One place you have written called hash to create the ID. Another place you have created the dot to create the class. Now if I ask you, what is the difference between ID and class? What will be your answer? In this two, you understood anything? Anyone?
So ID should be for unique elements and class should be for common.
That common and all, that the next level of understanding. Till now, what we have written in that, how to create the ID using,
Hash.
and how to create the class using dot.
Dot. Yeah.
Now next difference I will guide you. Okay. Next difference I will guide you. ID we are creating using hash and class we are creating using dot. Next, remember, okay, listen one line properly. In one page, one type of design is required many times. In one page, one type of design is required many times. Again, I will repeat. In one page, one type of design is repeated. One type of look and feel, one type of structure, one kind of design is required many times to display. Then you will use the class. In one page, one type of design is required many times, then we use the class. And in one page, one type of design is required only one times, we will use the ID. Let me guide you here. The theory says in one page, one type of design is required only one time, then use the ID. In one page, one type of design is required only one time, then use the ID. Now look into this page. What we should follow? To design this, shall we follow the ID or class? ID or class? In one page, one type of design is required. How many times? In one page, one type of design is required only one time. Then you can use the ID. Look at here. The upper section is different. Left block is different. Right block is different. So in one page, one type of design is only one time. No, look at there. Left block, whatever you have, is it repeated anywhere? No. The upper section we have, is it repeated anywhere? No. So in this case, you are going to create not the class, you are going to create the ID, because all three blocks are different, all three designs are different. You have to create the ID. But in the same page, if I go here and create like this, one block and one more block, one block and one more block. Okay, one block, right? So look at this. This design is how many times? 4 times. Upper section is unique, ID is required. Left section is unique, ID is required. Right section is also unique, ID is required. But inside the right section, you can see there is a multiple 4 blocks are there, and all 4 blocks look similar. All 4 blocks look similar. So there you are not going to use the ID, you are going to use the class. Okay, so that line, hope you will remember. In one page, one type of design is required only one time, then ID. In one page, one type of design is required many times, then the class. Go here, write a, look into this file. These 3 look similar, so we have given the class. This look different, so we have given the ID. If these 2 look same and first look also same, like suppose first 2 block is orange, last 2 block is pink, you cannot write ID, you have to write the class only, because more than one element is similar. More than one element is similar. In that case, we cannot write the ID. We will write as a class only. So we'll go to the developer guide and we'll write quickly where to write the ID. If in one page, one type of design required only one time. In the case of class, you can write if in one page, one type of design required many times, then we will use the class. Write it quickly. Hope written. So how to create the ID? Using hash. How to create the ID? How to create the ID? Using hash. How to create the class? Using dot. Okay. How to create the ID? That is using hash. And how to create the class? Using dot. Now when to use the ID and when to use the class. Okay, when to use the ID, when to use the class. If inside one page, one type of design is required again and again, in one page, one type of design is required again and again. So in that case, we can use the class because you cannot write the code again and again. So for that, class will be the best option. Write once and call everywhere. But in the same page, if one design is completely unique, it is not matching anywhere, you should not use the class. You can use class also, but ID is the best option. You can use class also, but ID will be the best option. Unique. Now, why that will be there, we will learn later, but remember that. Okay, using ID, you can call the, using same ID, you can call the JavaScript. Using same ID, you can call the Ajax. Using same ID, you can call the jQuery. Using same ID, you can do many more things. Okay. If one ID you are calling many times, duplicate will happen here. Simple logic. Suppose your PAN number, my PAN number, both will be same. What will happen? Conflict will happen or not? Your DL number, my DL number. If you keep same, what will happen? Difficulties will come. Simple logic. If two-person PAN number is same, problem will happen. 2% DL is same, problem will happen. So that it says like, okay, keep the ID different. ID should not duplicate. ID should not repeat. In one page, one ID should not repeat. Whereas in one page, one class can repeat. If one ID will repeat, duplicate will happen. Tomorrow JavaScript will get confused, browser will be confused. Okay. Okay. Thank you. See you next day. Next day, tomorrow we have, tomorrow which day it is? Friday or Saturday? Tomorrow we have Saturday. So next class will be on Monday directly. So Monday.